Tonight, a local community grieves another 40 unmarked graves in a former Indian residential school in British Columbia, with the exact number still unknown. And 58 Canadians evacuated from Sudan as fighting rages in the North African country and foreign diplomatic operations come to a standstill. We cover stories about the UK's controversial immigration bill, a Canadian academic receiving a life sentence from a French court, and the unclear future of the Black Sea grain deal. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Catherine Bullock. The Shipwreck First Nation in British Columbia has discovered what they think are 40 unmarked graves at a former Indian residential school. The nation says there have been stories for decades about such graves existing at the old St. Augustine's residential school. The research into the residential school grounds is a joint project between the First Nation and the University of Saskatchewan. Terry Clark, Associate Professor at the university, says there is no doubt the graves are there. Clark says 40 is a conservative estimate. He says he strongly believes there are many more. An estimated 150,000 Indigenous children across Canada were forced to attend Indian residential schools in the 1800s and 1900s. There were more than 130 such schools. At least 4,500 children died at these schools. The last one closed in 1996. The stated goal was to wipe out Indigenous culture and replace it with white culture. In the past 2 years, about 2,000 unmarked graves have been found at former residential schools. A German plane has evacuated 58 Canadians from Sudan as violence escalates in the North African country. Another plane is on standby to airlift more. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement in Ottawa yesterday with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who is on an official visit to Canada. The evacuation comes after Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said earlier in the day that like-minded countries were prepared to help others leave Sudan. In the past 10 days, more than 420 have died, including at least 273 civilians in Sudan. Thousands more have been injured as Sudan's armed forces and paramilitary troops failed to reach a power-sharing arrangement. The capital of Khartoum was the scene yesterday of heavy fighting. There is looting of both businesses and homes. Food and fuel supplies are escalating in price and are in short supply. It is reported that hospitals are near collapse. There are about 1,600 Canadians registered with the Canadian Embassy in Sudan. The embassy ended consular services on Sunday. Canadian diplomats have left Sudan. A new survey released by Angus Reid yesterday shows a majority of Canadians do not support King Charles as head of state. It also shows that Canadians are not in favour of Camilla as Queen. Canada is a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, and as such, the King or Queen of Britain is automatically the head of state for Canada. Although the position is nominal, King Charles will assume the spot of Canada's head of state after his May 6 coronation, but he does not have the backing of Canadians for the post. They do not want his picture on the country's currency or to sing God Save the King at official ceremonies. According to the poll, only 28% of Canadians view Charles in a positive light. 60% do not want to recognise him as Canada's king. Support for Queen Camilla is even dimmer. 2/3 felt she should not be recognised as Queen of Canada. Only 21% backed her having the title, while 19% said she should be called Queen Consort. In fact, a majority of those surveyed said they do not care about the coronation at all. The Libyan Red Crescent says the bodies of a total of 34 migrants have been recovered since their boat sank off Libya's coast 5 days ago. The latest toll follows the recovery of 11 bodies yesterday, which have been handed over to authorities in the Mediterranean city of Sabratha, west of Tripoli. A security source told the media that the number of victims could increase. Last Wednesday, the Red Crescent reported finding 6 bodies, with 17 more discovered on Sunday. The central Mediterranean route remains the world's deadliest sea crossing for migrants. Tunisian authorities say 5 sub-Saharan African migrants drowned in 2 separate shipwrecks. The bodies of 31 sub-Saharan African migrants were discovered in a state of decomposition after being washed up by the sea. Dozens of migrants remain missing off Tunisia's coast after multiple boats have sunk in recent weeks. Please stay tuned. We will join you after a short break. The British Immigration Minister is defending the government's controversial illegal migration bill, calling it, quote, the single most significant piece of immigration legislation of modern times. Pointing to the dramatic increase in small boat crossings, he says there has been more than a 400% increase in these small boat crossing arrivals in the last 2 years. More than 44,000 migrants arrived in the UK crossing the English Channel last year. Speaking at an event, the minister called illegal migration a defining characteristic of the 21st century. He said that finding ways to stop the migration and maintaining the sovereignty of borders will also be one of the defining policy questions of this century. He said the bill enables the detention of illegal arrivals without bail or judicial review. He said that with this bill, those that make illegal journeys will now know it to be futile. The bill has been met with criticism from human rights organisations and refugee advocates. They argue that it violates international law and the UK's obligations under the Refugee Convention. It also triggered mass protests across the UK, with concerned citizens and NGOs accusing the government of scapegoating migrants. France has issued Friday an arrest warrant for a Lebanese-Canadian university professor. This comes after a French court found him guilty in absentia for a bomb attack on a Paris synagogue more than 40 years ago. Hassan Diab, who is now 69 years old, was given a life sentence. He is the only person accused in the attack. The bombing in 1980 resulted in the deaths of 4 people, injuring 46. It was the first deadly attack against a Jewish target on French soil since World War II. Diab did not attend the trial in Paris. His legal team says he was wrongly identified. Whether or not France can extradite Diab is uncertain. Such a move might strain the relationship between Canada and France. Israeli cabinet ministers today faced backlash from protesters during Memorial Day ceremonies amid tension over government plans to change the judicial system. An Israeli media source says the far-right National Security Minister, Intelligence Minister, and Transportation Minister were targeted by families of fallen Israeli soldiers during the ceremonies. Memorial Day is observed in Israel for all military personnel killed during Israeli military operations. Families of fallen soldiers called the security minister fascist in a ceremony at the Beersheba Military Cemetery. Druze protesters prevented the intelligence minister from entering a military cemetery in the town Isfir, while the transportation minister was interrupted while giving a speech to a Memorial Day ceremony in Tel Aviv. Israel has been in political turmoil over the past weeks over its controversial judicial reforms. The opposition views the plans as an executive power grab from the judicial authority. Last month, Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption, bowed to pressure and announced a temporary halt to the plans. Despite the delay, the Netanyahu government still plans to bring the controversial bill back to the Israeli parliament at the beginning of May. Ukraine is calling on global powers to pressure Russia to continue with its grain deal. The deal, also known as the Black Sea Grain Deal, was brokered last July by Turkey and the United Nations. The deal allows Ukraine to continue exporting grain from Black Sea ports. Since then, the deal has been renewed twice. It is now set to expire on May 18th. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has sent a letter to Russian President Vladimir Putin proposing a way forward that will extend and expand the deal. While the Ukrainian presidential advisor says he supports the letter, he says the initiative will only be successful if the international community pressures Russia to renew the deal. He told a media source that Ukraine will continue to deliver food cargoes to their destinations to fight global food supply shortages. The Kremlin says that global food shortages are not only because of Russia and Ukraine. The Kremlin spokesperson says the deal is not working for Moscow. While talking to reporters, he said the deal has not been fully implemented yet, and the conditions that concern Russia have not been addressed. Russia accuses Ukraine of using the grain corridor to attack Russian vessels in the Black Sea. A former Russian president has threatened Moscow's withdrawal from the deal if G7 countries ban exports to Russia. Thank you for watching. We are a charitable organization and need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or go to our website, muslimnetworktv, to make a donation so that we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.